he was already a god, the oldest one. He had a golden hall, an army of dead men who rose every night to feast, and 2 ravens that flew the whole world and came home to whisper him its secrets. And it was not enough, so one night the Allfather walked out to the great tree that holds up the sky. He took his own spear, the one he had killed thousands of men with, and he drove it into his own side. Then he hung himself in the branches, bleeding, and told the other gods to leave him there. "Do not cut me down." 9 nights, no food, no water, a god hanging himself, slowly dying on purpose because there was one thing left in all the worlds that even he did not know, and this was the only price it would take. Stay with me. This is where the runes came from. Every last one of them. To understand why a god would do that to himself, you have to understand what kind of god he was and what he was missing. His name was Odin, the Allfather, the oldest and highest of the Norse gods, king of Asgard, the hall above the clouds. He was the god of war, and of poetry, and of madness, and of death. When a man fell with a sword in his hand, it was Odin's hall, Valhalla, that he was carried up to drink and fight until the end of the world. He sat on a high seat called Skylf, and from it he could look out into all 9 worlds at once. His 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, flew out at every dawn, and came home at every dusk to land on his shoulders and tell him everything that had happened under the sky. Nobody living or dead knew more than Odin, and that was exactly the problem, because Odin had learned the one thing that clever people always learn in the end, just how much he still did not know. There was a knowledge older than the gods, older than Asgard, older than him. The runes. Now forget what you think a rune is. It was not really an alphabet, not just scratches for carving your name into the handle of a comb. The runes were the hidden shapes that the whole of fate was written in. Each one was a power to heal a wound that would not close, to blunt a blade coming at your neck, to calm a storm at sea, to take a dead man down off a gallows and make him sit up and talk to you. Whoever could find them and carve them and stain them red could reach a hand right into fate and change the letters. And they lay in the deep down among the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, the great ash whose branches hold all 9 worlds apart. Down at the very bottom, by the well, where 3 giant women, the Norns, sit and carve the destiny of every living thing into the wood. No god had ever been given the runes. Not even Odin. They could not be taught. They could not be handed across, or bought, or stolen off a shelf. The old poem is very clear about that. The runes could only be taken, and only by someone willing to pay for them with the one thing they could not stand to lose. We know all of this because Odin, in the end, told it on himself. It is written down in a poem called the Havamal, the sayings of the High One, some of the oldest words in the whole Norse world, carried in the mouths of poets for hundreds of years before anyone in Iceland finally set them on a page. Tyen, in the middle of all his dry advice about guests and drink and false friends, the god suddenly lowers his voice and tells you the strangest thing he ever did. He tells you how he hanged himself and what it bought. This was not the first thing Odin had given up for wisdom. Years before, he had gone down to another well, under another root of the same tree, where a severed head named Mimir kept watch over water that made you wise. Mimir would let him drink, but the price of one mouthful was an eye. And Odin paid it. He put out his own eye, dropped it into the well, and drank, and he walked away from that place half blind for the rest of forever. That is the face everyone knows him by. The old one-eyed wanderer. In the wide hat he bought 1 eye's worth of wisdom, and it still was not enough. The runes were more, and the runes cost more. There was no well keeper to haggle with this time, no head in the water to name a fair price. The runes belong to fate, and fate only respects one kind of payment, a death. Not a goat, not a horse, not some prisoner strung up in the god's honor, the way men would later kill for him. Fate did not want the offering, it wanted the worshiper. It wanted Odin. So he worked out the only sum that could ever balance. If a god has to be sacrificed to a god, and there is no god higher than Odin to receive it, then Odin would give Odin to himself. The priest and the victim and the god on the altar, all three of them, him, Tia, myself, given to myself. Then he climbed the tree at dusk up into Yggdrasil, the ash so vast its branches keep the worlds apart and its roots drink from the deep. Up so high that the ground he had ruled from disappeared into cloud beneath his feet. He took off his cloak. He set down his crown. Whatever a god is, under all of that, he meant to hang there as only that and nothing more. Then he took up Gungnir, his own spear, the weapon forged so true it never missed a throw and never stopped until the thing it was thrown at was dead. Do. And he drove it into his own side. To Onum, Odin, to Odin. Now let go of me and let me fall, or hold me here until I have what I came for. I will not climb down on my own. He looped the rope, kicked the branch away, and dropped into the open air. The tree took his weight. The wind began to turn him slowly on the rope. And far, far below him in the dark, under the roots, something noticed that a god had come to hang over the deep, and it began very softly to speak. Odin, Allfather, what are you doing all the way up on my tree? The voice came up out of the dark under the roots, like cold water moving beneath ice. He had been warned, the way gods are warned, that the thing in the deep would talk and that all of its strength was in the talking, so he did not answer it. You are a god. You do not belong on a rope like a thief or a slave. Say one word and a knot comes loose. Nobody is even watching. Who would ever know you climbed down? The first night, that was easy enough to ignore. He hung there and bled and watched the stars wheel past the black branches. And he thought, one night down. The second night, the cold got into the wound. The spear was still in him. Every time the wind turned him, the shaft of it dragged against the tree and woke the pain up fresh. 2 nights already. And for what? There is nothing down here. Odin, I have sat at the bottom of this tree since before you were born. And I promise you, there are no gifts waiting in the dark. Come down, go home, be a god again. 3. His lips split. Nobody came with bread. That was the rule he had set, and Frigg, his wife, held the other gods to it, standing at the foot of the tree with her hand pressed over her mouth, forbidden to send so much as a cup of water up to her own husband. 4. The ravens circled him and would not land, because there was nothing he could tell them and nothing they could do. 5. He stopped being able to feel his hands. The world below him went soft and far away, and he was not always certain now whether his one eye was open or shut. 5 nights hanging for a story the giants made up to laugh at you. Do you feel any wiser, Allfather? You feel like meat, that is all. You are now cold meat turning on a string. And the terrible thing was that it was right. He did not feel wise. He felt like an animal dying slowly in a snare. And with every hour it got harder to remember why a god had ever thought this was a good idea. 6. He started to see things in the branches. His own dead sons, battles that had not happened yet, an enormous wolf with the sun caught in its teeth. He could not tell if they were visions or just the dreams of a starving brain, and there was no one left to ask. There you feel that you are breaking. This is not wisdom coming for you. It is only your mind going. Let go. Odin, I will make it painless, just open your hands. And that the kindness was the hardest thing to hold out against. Not the threats, the mercy, the soft voice, offering to end it. No, not yet. 3 more nights. By the 7th night, he had stopped counting the stars, because he could no longer tell them apart from the spots swimming across his eye. By the 8th night, his heart began doing a thing a heart is not supposed to do. Skipping, stumbling. A god was dying, which is not even meant to be possible, and his body had run itself all the way down to the last of what it had. This is the 9th night. Odin, your last one. You spent everything you had to hang on a tree and starve, and now you will die here for nothing and be forgotten. And I will be the only one who ever knew you were fool enough to try. And Odin, with almost nothing left in him, did the one thing he had been saving every last scrap of his strength for, the thing this whole ordeal had been building toward. He looked down. Not up at the gods, at the light, at the warm world. He was leaving down into the deep that the voice had been climbing out of. Into the dark, under the roots, below the well, below the bottom of everything. where no god is ever meant to look. The old poem says it in 4 plain words. I peered into the depths. The depths were not empty. Down there in the black at the very floor of creation, something had been waiting for eyes brave enough or broken enough to find its shapes. Burning quietly in the dark, lines and angles and forks of pale fire, thousands upon thousands of them, turning slow as fish at the bottom of a still lake. The runes, the real ones, not carvings of the things themselves, the actual bones of how the world is put together, lying right there where they had always been, waiting under everyone's feet for somebody willing to hang over the abyss long enough to see them. No, not those. You were never meant to. Look away, God, close your eye. Those are not for you. For 9 nights the voice had begged him to look away from the tree. Now all at once, it was begging him to look away from the deep. And Odin understood in one bright cold flash that this was the exact moment it had been afraid of. The whole time, that was all he needed to know. The runes were real, and they were his. If only he could take them. There was just the small matter of how a dying man roped to a tree with his hands gone dead and his own spear in his body was supposed to reach down to the bottom of the universe and pick them up. He could not reach them with his hands. His hands were finished. He could not climb down to them. The rope had him, and that was the whole point of the rope. So he took them the only way he had left with everything he was. He reached down into the dark with his will, with his ruined body and his stopping heart and his one staring eye, and every last shred of the god he had spent 9 nights burning away. He reached for the runes with all of it at once. And he screamed. The old poem does not pretty this up. It does not say he received them or was granted them or was blessed with them. It says he took them up screaming. A god, shrieking at the bottom of the night, tearing fistfuls of fate up out of the deep by main force. Tuzan, and the runes came up. They came up out of the dark and into him like a river running backwards. Up the length of the tree, up through the soles of his feet and the wound in his side and the empty socket of his missing eye, every burning shape pouring into him at once, and he knew them, all of them. The whole alphabet of creation, learned in one tearing instant, off by heart, forever. And the tree could not hold what he had become. The rope broke, or he broke it, and Odin fell. 9 nights up in the branches, and then straight down past the trunk, past the roots, the spear ripping free of his side as he dropped, the whole world tree shaking a storm of leaves loose behind him. 2 came out of that tree, the same way he had gone into it alone, screaming, paying. He hit the ground at the foot of Yggdrasil, and for one moment he was nothing empty. A dead god face down in the dirt, the rope still round his neck, the runes still cooling in his blood. The voice in the deep said nothing at all. It had lost, and then, Din breathed. He got up off that ground a different thing than the god who had climbed up. He had died. He had actually died somewhere up there in the 9th night. The care, and he had carried something back through the door with him that no one, god or man, had ever brought out of the dark before. The old poem lists what woke up inside him, and it runs on, because there was so much of it. He knew how to heal now. Any sickness, any sorrow, any wound, he could sing the pain right out of a body. He knew how to stop a sword in the air, so a blade swung at him fell as soft as a reed. He knew how to catch an arrow in flight and hold it still. He knew the runes that snap the fetters off a prisoner's ankles, and the ones that lock an enemy's tight so he cannot move at all. He could put out a fire just by looking at it, flatten a storm at sea, catch a witch flying through the night sky and send her home lost, unable to find her way back into her own skin. And then the Dark One, the 12th. Din said that if he saw a hanged man swinging on a gallows, he could carve and color the runes so that the corpse climbed down and walked and sat and talked with him. The god who had hanged himself now owned the hanged. Of course he did. He had been one. Then an old giant of the deep, Besla's father, the one whose blood ran in Odin's own veins, gave him 9 great songs to go with the runes. And at last, after 9 dry nights, somebody poured him a drink, not water, the stolen mead of poetry itself out of the cauldron they called Odre, so that from that night on, wisdom and poetry came out of Odin's mouth as easily as breath. The poem says, and I love this line, that then he began to grow and to bear fruit and to thrive. One word found him another word. One deed led him on to the next. He had bought the thread. Now he could follow it anywhere. And in the end, he gave the runes away. That was the strange mercy of it. He kept some back for the gods, but the rest he taught to everyone. To the elves through one of their own, to the dwarves through Devalin in the dark under the mountains, to the giants, and at the very bottom of the list to human beings, everyone got a share of what one god had nearly died to find. But he paid for it every day after, in a way you do not see at first. Because when you can read fate, you can read all of it. And down in that deep, along with the runes, Odin had seen the end. He had seen the wolf with the sun in its teeth. He had seen the last battle, Ragnarok, where the gods lose, where he himself is swallowed whole. He came down from that tree, knowing the exact shape of his own death, unable to stop it, and never again able to unknow it. That is why the wandering god always looks so tired in the stories, why he is forever hoarding one more secret, forever asking one more question, forever trading away another piece of himself for another scrap of knowing. He found out up on that tree that knowledge does not save you, it only lets you watch it come. And forever after, his people remembered how their highest god had bought his wisdom. When they gave a man to Odin, they did not simply cut his throat, they hanged him, and they ran a spear through him both at once, the tree and the blade together. They called Odin 100 names, the Allfather, the Wanderer, the One-Eyed, but one of the oldest is the coldest. And now you know where it comes from, the god of the hanged. So that is the truth the Allfather trusted you with, buried in the middle of an old poem about how to behave at a feast. The runes were never a gift not to men, and it turns out not even to gods. Nobody handed them down. Nobody was born already knowing them. They had to be taken up out of the dark at the bottom of a tree by someone willing to hang there long past the point where it made any sense at all. And here is the part the god wanted you to sit with. He did not send a servant up that tree. He did not offer 100 prisoners in his place. There is a line in the poem, right after, where he warns you off exactly that. Better to ask for nothing, he says, than to offer up too much of the wrong thing. A gift always goes looking for its like in return. The fate did not want more, it wanted him, the most precious thing he had, which was himself. We like to picture wisdom as a thing you can be handed, a book passed across a desk, a secret whispered by someone older. Odin's story says no. The deep stuff, the runes under everything, you only get those by climbing up into the cold on your own, giving up the thing you least want to lose, and holding on in the dark long after a soft, kind, reasonable voice has started telling you to come down. He was not the wisest god because he was given the most. Every other god was given more, and stayed home, and stayed comfortable, and stayed shallow. He was the wisest because he gave the most himself to himself, and hung there over the abyss until it paid out. 9 nights, one eye already gone, and a spear in his own side. That was the exchange rate on the only knowledge that ever really mattered. And a god looked at that price and paid it, and never once called it too high. So the next time you see a rune on a standing stone, in a film tattooed on somebody's arm, you know the secret of it now. Every one of those shapes was dragged up out of the dark by a one-eyed god who hanged himself for 9 nights to reach them. Which leaves me with a question for you, and I actually want the answer this time. What would you hang 9 nights in the cold to know? Is there any piece of knowledge, any answer at all that you would put a spear in your own side to get? Or was Odin never really wise, just the first addict, trading himself away one eye, and one night at a time for the next hit of knowing? Tell me down in the comments, I read them. This is the forgotten Pantheon, and we have only just walked into the cold north. The tree is still standing, the god is still hanging, and there is so much more of this world to show you. Because Odin came down from that tree able to see everything that was coming. And the very first thing he saw, the death that broke his heart before it had even happened, was the death of his own gentlest son. the brightest of all the gods, the one nobody could save. His name was Balder, and his story is the one I am telling you next. Subscribe, and we will go and try to save him. We already know how it ends. Come anyway.